Hey everyone, welcome back. So for tonight, we're talking about haunted locations. You've probably heard of the famous ones. Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital, that place became a whole movie. There's Yeongdeok Haunted House up on the coast. But there's this other location that's ranked as one of the top 3 most haunted places in the entire country. And it's weird how little people talk about it outside of local urban legend circles. Neulbom Garden restaurant in Jecheon City, North Chungcheong province. And here's what makes it different from all those hospitals and abandoned mansions. This wasn't some institution where terrible medical practices happened or some old house with a dark history going back centuries. This was a family restaurant, a place where people gathered to eat galbi, celebrate birthdays, share meals. A warm, normal place, until it became the site of cascading tragedy that destroyed an entire family within just a few years. The building's been renovated now, part of some local art district, I think. The hauntings have reportedly stopped. Fresh paint, new purpose, clean slate. But here's the thing about Korean culture. There's this belief that some spirits don't leave just because you paint over the walls or change what the building's being used for. They wait, especially if they died with Han, that deep, unresolved grief that sits in your chest like a stone you can't swallow. Tonight, we're going to explore what happened at Neulbom Garden, why an entire family was consumed by grief in the span of a few years, and whether renovation can truly cleanse a place where unrestful spirits linger. This is what I've pieced together from local accounts, investigative reports, and the people who remember when it was still standing empty. In the late 1980s of Jecheon City, Park Sang-chul and his wife Kim Yeon-suk opened Neulbom Garden on this isolated hillside near what would become the Jungang Expressway, traditional Korean BBQ place specialized in galbi. The location was perfect back then. Before the expressway got built and diverted all the traffic, this route was packed with travelers, people driving through the mountains who needed a place to stop and eat. The restaurant had this spacious dining hall, big windows looking out over the valley, outdoor seating area with a garden. You know, one of those places that just feels welcoming the second you walk in. Sang-chul handled the grilling and the meat prep. Yeon-suk managed the kitchen and the banchan. And their daughter, Park Min-ji, grew up in that restaurant. Helped serve customers when she got old enough. Did her homework at one of the corner tables. Laughed with the regulars who came through every week. By all accounts, it was a success. Not like they were getting rich, but they were comfortable. They'd built something together. The restaurant was their dream made real, you know. This warm, bustling place that smelled like charcoal smoke and garlic and sesame oil, where families came to celebrate and travelers stopped to rest. That was Neulbom Garden before everything fell apart. Late 1990s. Sources vary on the exact year. Some say 97, others say 98. Min-ji was involved in a car accident, and here's the horror of it. It happened directly in front of the restaurant, right there on the road. The family witnessed it. Some accounts say a truck, others say a car lost control on the curve. Either way, killed instantly or brain dead with severe injuries. She was gone, and her parents saw it happen. Min-ji was in her late teens, maybe early 20s, right at that age where your whole life's supposed to be opening up in front of you. And she died right there, in the place her parents had chosen to build their future. The guilt that must have come with that. Sang-chul and Yeon-suk had picked this location, built this restaurant here, and now their daughter was dead on this road because they were here. That kind of guilt doesn't just sit with you, it becomes you. The trauma was immediate and total. Business started declining after the accident. Some customers stopped coming because they'd heard what happened, and it felt wrong to go there, like intruding on private grief. Others came once, felt the heaviness in the air, and didn't return. The restaurant that had been so warm and full of life became cold, empty. Former employees, there's this one account from a woman who worked there in the late 90s. I'll call her Lee Soo-jin, though that might not be her real name. She said Sang-chul became a different person after Minji died. Just silent. He'd stand at the grill, going through the motions, but his eyes were somewhere else. Yeon-suk tried to hold things together, kept the kitchen running, kept serving customers when they came, but you could see it eating at her, the weight of it. This is where the haunting started, actually, before anyone died inside the restaurant itself. Soo-jin and other employees would be closing up late at night, cleaning the grills, putting away the banchan, counting the register, and they'd hear it, faint laughter, a young girl's voice, bright and innocent, echoing from somewhere in the dining hall. They'd look up, see nothing, go back to work. Told themselves it was exhaustion, imagination, the building settling, but it kept happening. That laugh. Minji's laugh, probably. Even after she was gone. Within a year of Minji's death, Sang-chul hanged himself inside the restaurant. The exact location isn't publicly confirmed. Some sources say the kitchen, others say a storage room in the back. He killed himself in the place where they'd built their dream, the place they'd built for family and warmth and the future. In Korean culture, suicide brings profound spiritual unrest. It's not just a tragedy, it creates wonhon, an unrestful spirit, because the person died with everything unresolved. All that grief, all that guilt, all that unbearable pain. It doesn't go anywhere, it stays. Sang-chul's death compounded the harm that was already soaking into that building. First, Minji's death right outside. Now Sang-chul's suicide inside. The restaurant wasn't just marked by tragedy anymore. It was becoming a container for it. Yeon-suk was left alone. Can you imagine? Daughter dead, husband dead, and she's standing in this restaurant that was supposed to be their family's legacy, trying to keep it running even though every single surface must have felt like it was screaming at her. Neighbors from that time describe her as already being a ghost before she died, moving through the space mechanically, barely speaking, eyes empty like someone who's not really there anymore. She tried to keep the restaurant open for a little while. I don't know if it was denial or desperation or just not knowing what else to do. But the haunting got worse during this period. Employees reported cold spots, sounds of footsteps in rooms they knew were empty, the overwhelming sense of being watched. Soo-jin, the employee I mentioned earlier, she quit after hearing a man's voice late one night when the restaurant was completely empty. Just one word, spoken clearly from somewhere in the back. Minji. She didn't stick around to hear if there was more, just grabbed her stuff and left and never came back. Yeon-suk died shortly after Sang-chul. Heartbreak. Literal cardiac failure from grief, which apparently can happen when someone's under that level of emotional trauma. Other sources hint at a suspected gas stove-related incident, maybe suicide, maybe accidental, nobody knows for sure, and the family's gone, so there's no one left to ask. Either way, by 2001, the entire family was dead. Minji, Sang-chul, Yeon-suk, all gone within just a few years. Neulbom Garden closed permanently. The building sat empty. Nobody wanted to take it over. Place where an entire family was destroyed by cascading tragedy, where a father hanged himself, where grief had become so thick you could feel it in the air. Locals avoided it. The building started to decay. Broken windows, overgrown vegetation creeping up the walls. This is when the haunting became undeniable. Not just employees hearing things late at night, but neighbors, people driving past, anyone who got close to the building. The most common report was the laughter. That same young girl's voice coming from inside the empty restaurant. Usually at night, often during rainy weather, or around the anniversaries of the deaths. People would hear it and cross to the other side of the street, walk faster, not look at the building. There were sightings too. A female figure in the dining hall, visible through the broken windows, sometimes described as young, Minji presumably, and sometimes as older, maybe Yeon-suk. The figure would appear to be setting tables or cleaning up, moving through the motions of running the restaurant, even though the restaurant had been closed for years. Electronic disturbances were constant. People walking past with phones or cameras would experience malfunctions, batteries draining instantly, devices shutting off for no reason, cold spots that made no sense, like standing next to an open freezer in the middle of summer. The phenomena followed patterns. Increased activity on rainy nights. Activity spiked around the anniversaries of the deaths, which makes sense if you believe spirits are tied to specific dates, specific memories. And late evening, around the time the restaurant used to close, when Sang-chul and Yeon-suk would have been cleaning up and Minji would have been finishing her homework at that corner table. That's when the sounds were loudest. Footsteps, dishes clattering, voices, not clear enough to make out words, just the murmur of conversation like the restaurant was still operating, still full of life, even though it had been dead for years. By the 2000s and 2010s, Neulbom Garden had solidified into urban legend, one of the most haunted places in South Korea, up there with Gonjeom and Yeongdeok. And unlike those places that became tourist attractions, this one stayed local. People knew about it if they were from the area or into paranormal stuff, but it never got the media coverage the bigger locations got. Maybe because it was too sad and too real. Not some institutional horror or ancient curse, just a family that couldn't survive what happened to them. There's this account from a TV crew that came out in the mid-2000s to film some paranormal investigation show. They set up cameras, audio equipment, spent the first hour interviewing locals who all said the same thing. Don't go in there, it's not safe. You'll feel it the second you walk in. The crew went in anyway, because that's the whole point, right? Get the footage. But they reported immediate unease the moment they entered. This overwhelming sadness, like walking into a room where something terrible had just happened and the air hadn't cleared yet. Difficulty breathing, the sense of being unwelcome, like they were intruding on something private, and the space itself wanted them gone. One of the cameramen captured audio, clear recording of a young girl's laughter, coming from somewhere in the dining hall. They played it back, tried to locate the source, found nothing. Another crew member reported seeing a female figure in the kitchen area, just standing there with her back turned. He called out, asked if someone else had come in, and the figure turned toward him. He said he saw her face for less than a second, long enough to register that something was deeply wrong. Pale skin, eyes that didn't focus on him so much as through him. That's all he remembers. He collapsed where he stood, lost consciousness immediately. The crew found him minutes later on the kitchen floor, unresponsive. When he came to, he was disoriented, nauseous, complaining of a crushing pressure in his chest and an overwhelming sense of grief that didn't feel like his own. The shoot was abandoned after 3 hours. The producer said later, in an interview, "It wasn't that anything attacked us, it was the feeling, like being inside someone's grief, Like standing in a room that's full of the worst day of someone's life and it's still happening over and over. We couldn't stay. In recent years, I think within the last 5 years or so, maybe even more recent than that, the building was renovated. It's part of some local art district now, or repurposed as a cafe. Accounts vary on the exact current use, but the point is, it's been completely redone. The hauntings reportedly ceased. People who visit now describe it as bright, modern, welcoming. Fresh paint, new furniture, art on the walls. None of that oppressive atmosphere that defined the place for 2 decades. Visitors who don't know the history have no idea anything happened there. It's just another cafe or gallery space in a small city, nothing remarkable about it. But here's the question that locals who remember the old stories keep asking. Can renovation truly cleanse a place where an entire family was consumed by tragedy? In Korean culture, physical renovation doesn't automatically cleanse spiritual unrest. You can change the walls, change the paint, change the furniture, change what the building's being used for, but that doesn't change what happened there. The proper way to cleanse a place like this would be through gut, a shamanistic cleansing ceremony. It's this whole ritual process where a mudang, a Korean shaman, performs ceremonies to appease the spirits, release the han, help the wonhon move on to wherever they're supposed to go. Ancestral rites, offerings, specific prayers and rituals that vary depending on the situation, but the core purpose is always the same. Acknowledge the suffering, give it space to be witnessed, and then release it. There's no public record that any gut was performed at Neulbom Garden before or during the renovation. Maybe it was done privately. Maybe the new owners hired a mudang quietly without announcing it. But from what I can find, there's no indication that proper rituals were conducted. And if they weren't, then according to Korean spiritual beliefs, the spirits might still be there, just dormant, just quiet, waiting beneath the fresh paint and the modern furniture and the art installations. Because wonhon are spirits who died with unresolved trauma. They linger in the places where they suffered, unable to move on until their han is released. Renovation changes the surface, but it doesn't change the foundation. The memory remains, the grief remains, and if the spirits weren't properly released, they may simply be waiting for the right conditions to make themselves known again. Some cafe staff and visitors, this is recent, like within the past year or two, report occasional phenomena. Nothing dramatic, nothing like what happened during the abandoned years, but enough to make them pause. A fleeting sound of laughter on quiet evenings, just for a second, and then gone. A sudden cold spot near what used to be the dining area, no explanation for it, no draft or AC vent that would cause that kind of localized cold. The sense, just for a moment, that someone is standing behind you when you know for certain you're alone. These incidents are rare, brief, easy to dismiss as imagination or coincidence or old pipes in the walls. But locals who remember the stories, who remember when the building stood empty and everyone avoided it, they recognize the signs. They know what that laughter means. Whether the spirits are truly gone or just silent, nobody can say for certain. Here's what I think Neulbom Garden actually represents. This isn't just a ghost story about a haunted restaurant. It's a story about how grief compounds when there's no way to process it, no way to release it, no support system to help carry the weight. Minji's death was random. Terrible luck, wrong place, wrong time. A senseless tragedy that destroys people because there's no reason for it, no way to make sense of it. But Sang-chul and Yeon-suk's deaths were choices they made because the pain was unbearable. They couldn't survive losing their daughter. The restaurant they'd built with love and hope became a tomb for their sorrow. Neulbom Garden became a container for the family's Han. That's why the haunting was so powerful. That's why so many people over so many years felt that weight the moment they entered. It wasn't that the spirits were malicious or trying to hurt anyone. They were just present, unable to leave, trapped by grief that had nowhere else to go. Park Sang-chul, Kim Yeon-suk, Park Min-ji. Their story is one of cascading tragedy, but it's also a story about silence and isolation. After Min-ji died, nobody knew how to help the family. Korean culture, especially back then, there was this tendency to avoid families dealing with tragedy. Shame, discomfort, not knowing what to say, so you say nothing. After Sang-chul's suicide, that isolation probably intensified. People avoid cursed families rather than supporting them. Yeon-suk was left completely alone in her grief, in that restaurant full of memories, and eventually she couldn't carry it anymore either. The haunting might be the family's way of refusing to be forgotten, of demanding that their pain be acknowledged. Neulbom Garden was never about angry spirits or violent hauntings. It was about what happens when grief has nowhere to go. When a family loses everything and the world doesn't know how to respond, so it looks away. The restaurant became a container for that silence, that isolation, that unresolved sorrow. Whether anything truly remains there now is something no one can say with certainty. But some places remember what happened inside them, even when we try to move on. And sometimes, all that memory needs is a quiet moment to remind us it was never truly gone.